Good evening, and welcome to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. It is December 7th, 2021.
Tim, people are speaking in council, but it's extremely garbled.
Not sure who that was there, but Sabrina? I think we'll carry on. Okay. It is the first Tuesday in December, and we have our regular meetings on the first and third Tuesdays of most every month. So welcome this evening. I'd like to invite you to stand and join us this evening in an invocation led by Pastor Kevin Scott of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And immediately following that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Scott.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you, Lord, for this opportunity, Lord, for this Oak Harbor Council meeting to meet in planning for the future of this town, Lord. Father, we want to pray for wisdom for this council tonight. You know the agenda. You know what's best for the citizens of this town. And so please give the council members wisdom tonight as they make these decisions. Father, we also want to pray for world events. We think of what's happening on the Ukraine and Russian border right now. Please be with that situation. Be with the COVID situation around the world, Lord, and may families be able to enjoy a holiday season with each other, Lord. Father, may goods be able to be distributed during this season again so families can enjoy this time. We thank you for always listening to us and hearing us. We thank you for hearing and answering our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So due to COVID-19, this will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Due to Governor Inslee's order, masks are required for everyone in the council chambers, regardless of vaccination status. City staff are participating via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. Tonight's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube and on cable channel 10, HD 1090. And I'd like to move to our roll call, but I believe we've got everybody here with the exception of Councilor Wassinger, who I understand has got an illness in the family, so.
I'm here.
I'm okay. Then why don't you do a regular roll call then, Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Present. Councilmember Heisen.
Present.
Councilmember Servadius.
Present.
Councilmember Wassinger.
Present.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Present.
Councilmember Mack.
Present.
Councilmember Stuckey.
Present.
Mayor, all members of council are present.
Great, thank you, Julie. So I'd like to welcome Councilmember Brian Stuckey to his first meeting. Representing position 7 on the council, Councilmember Stuckey was elected to the seat previously held by Councilmember Larson, who vacated the position when he moved outside the city limits. Position 7 was subsequently filled by the appointment of Councilmember Goebel. We thank Councilmember Goebel for her service to our city and know she continues to do great things for the Oak Harbor School District. Councilmember Stuckey's election was certified by the Canvassing Board for Island County on November 23rd, and he was sworn in here at City Hall that same day. As the person elected to position 7, Councilmember Stuckey fills both the remainder of the term as well as the term that begins in January. So welcome, Councilmember Stuckey.
Thank you, Mayor. Privileged to be here.
So we've done the roll call. I would let me see, we don't have any absent council members, so we'll just move to the agenda. And if there are no changes to the agenda, that will be approved as presented. Seeing none, I guess we'll start with our first item under presentations. Tonight we have a community presentation. We have our Boy Scout Troop 4059 is here for their annual Wreath presentation to the city. I'd like to call at this time on Troop Master Matthew Erickson. Invite you to come in and please introduce your troop. Yeah, maybe. Oh, here we go.
Thank you for having us. I'm Matthew.
Come to the microphone.
Okay.
You don't need to lean down, just stand there and it'll.
Okay. All right. Thank you for having us. I'm Matthew Garston, Assistant Patrol Leader from Troop 4059. We would like to give you a gift on the behalf of 4059, but before we give it to you, a little history on our troop and our fundraiser. Every year for decades, Troop 4059 has been making wreaths to send scouts from your community out on nature hikes, campouts, canoe trips, summer camps, 50-mile hikes, and high adventure. This fundraiser makes all those adventures possible, so thank you to everyone who donates. On behalf of Troop 4059, I'd like to present you this wreath.
If you could all step forward a little bit so you can see on the camera. There we go. Very
Okay,
good.
get some pictures and we'll take a very quick recess here. You got the pictures done?
I got my pictures,
Great, okay.
except for the council wanting to take photos with them, but yes.
Great, so council will come down and we'll take a brief recess to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's been 47 years that you guys have been doing this. Because the first year you did it, I was,
Oh, it's beautiful.
us every day. Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. This is December 7th, 2021. We had a short recess to accept the beautiful wreath that's in front of our desk here in front of us today from the Boy Scout Troop 40-4059. Thank you. So we'll move on then at this time to citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. Citizens may also comment on corresponding agenda items. In this hybrid meeting format, citizens can attend and give comment in person or via the online comment form at www.oakharbor.org/public comment. Or email the city clerk at jlindsay@oakharbor.org prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting, or call 360-279-4531 to leave a voicemail to be played during the council meeting. Call to leave a voicemail after 5 p.m. on the Friday preceding the meeting and prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. When leaving a voicemail for public comment, please state your name first and last name and clearly and limit the comments to 3 minutes. And according to my notes, we received no comments from employees, but we do have one comment that was received, and I think that's up on our public comment here in front of us right now. And this
Mayor, we do have one member of the public in the audience who has requested to speak, Mr. Eric Marshall.
okay. So we'll have Mr. Marshall come forward at this point to speak.
Thank you, Mr.
Please.
Mayor, Councilmembers. My name is Eric Marshall. I'm at Southeast Ely Street. I came to publicly express my opposition of the access road from Fakkema Road to the properties that are there. I've emailed to talk about it. I know this is a long time in coming, but I'll just share with council what I've learned over the last few weeks. There are 11 parcels in question. 4 of those parcels are owned by the city. 4 of them are owned by 20 Oak Harbor LLC. 1 is owned by America Real Estate. The other 2 are privately owned. 20 Oak Harbor LLC and America Real Estate are all owned by are all the same company. Essentially, they have the same governors. They are out of Arizona. They are a publicly traded. America Real Estate is a publicly traded company on NASDAQ. It was founded in 1945. It has over 22,000 employees. And it reports over $755 million in sales. Their CEO and one of their principal governors, Edward Schoen, is worth at least $7.86 billion as of 15 June 2021. He owns over 81,000 units of Americo stock worth over $6 billion. So of those pieces of property out there, we are going to build an access road for a multi-billion-dollar company. They don't need our money. They don't need that road. If they want that road, they can build it themselves. Every answer that I've been given as to why that road is being built doesn't seem to hold up. The parcel numbers in the council packet that said this road is a service parcel numbers R13325-357-2520. That's owned by 20 Oak Harbor LLC. Parcel number R13325401214 is owned by America Real Estate Company. Parcel number 13325367218, I don't see that one even on the county's rolls. So the only one that I see that matches even close to that is 13325280218. That's Mariner Self-Storage. They already have access. So the reason that was being given as to why we need these don't seem to hold up any longer. So I just wanted to come and express to council my displeasure. I don't think that we should be spending that kind of money on a road for a multi-billion-dollar company. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Are there any other here for public comment? It doesn't look like it. Okay. Then we have, I believe, an agenda item on our consent agenda that perhaps deals with Mr. Marshall's question. And we're on now to our consent agenda. I see Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove item 4E for discussion.
4E, okay. And that is the access road for discussion. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no others, then the items A through D and item F will be approved as presented on the consent agenda. So then we will talk about item number 4E at this point in time. And I see that is initially comes from our Public Works Department, both our interim Public Works Director and our city engineer. So would either of you or Mr. Osborne want to comment on this at this time?
Mayor, this is
Yes.
City Administrator Osborne.
Yes.
I believe Brett Arvison is ready to give a presentation on this item,
Oh, Brett Arvidsson, okay.
and I think he's going to be dependent upon our videographer to bring it forward. Is that correct, Brett?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Good evening, Council. My name is Brett Arvidsson. I'm the city project manager and working on this project. And I'm going to give you some background in what we're doing with this Fakkema access road. The item we did pull is simply a contract amendment, but I want to give you a little bit more background on what we're doing here. Talk about the project. This is designed to construct approximately 2,000 feet of new public road. It's serving 11 parcels, totaling 53 acres. We do own 4 of the parcels for 17. There's 17 privately owned parcels, totaling 36 acres. They're zoned commercial. There has been some discussion in the past of why we're building the road if the parcels adjoin Highway 20. Unfortunately, Highway 20 is a Class 2 access controlled road. So this is a WSDOT standard. It is a state highway. Class 2 does favor highway mobility over access. And so they basically want all the parcels to be coming into a collector, an arterial, then accessing the highway. Also, the current access that is there has been there for a long time. It's grandfathered. It's a single driveway, but it doesn't meet current standards for traffic safety. There's a lot of fast-moving traffic, acceleration, a couple passing lanes, 2 intersections within a short distance, and we do have a history of fatalities there. So at this point, we would not approve any access for that. Plus, we are required to operate under the WSDOT's access management plan for the highways. So basically they require for property development to have a different driveway. So right now, these properties are proposed to access SR20 from Fakkema Road following the project completion. Next slide, please. Tim, can you move my slide? Thank you. This area has been under some interest for commercial development for a long time. We've had previous applications to the project, and they haven't come to fruition due to difficulties access. Right now, the commercial project is underway. It's actually under construction. We have taken steps to provide safe access to the properties. When we have dedicated right-of-way for the access road, like I say, we do own property there, and we're able to dedicate a right-of-way for that. We have done a topographic survey of the area. And the intention of this road is to improve the development potential of the north edge of the city, increase capacity of the city street system, and preserve capacity and safety of SR20. Next slide, please. This is from our comprehensive plan, transportation comprehensive plan. That yellow area up there on the top of the slide is the property in question. It is on the north side of town. Most of us have driven by there at one time or another. Next slide. So when they talk about the history of this project, it was identified, as I said, as a potential future street in the 2016 comp plan. We did dedicate right away in December of 2016. We did approve funding for the project. It was an identified capital project at that point, and funding was approved in 2018. Basically, we were responding to development needs in the area as they hadn't come to fruition. We kind of delayed on it. We did complete the topographic survey in May of 2019. At that point, we selected Harmsen Engineering to provide an engineering, design, and construction support for the project, and we began those design services in 2020. Right now, the design is complete, and we're scheduled to advertise the project, and probably right after the first year, and begin construction in the spring. We were hoping to do it last fall, but didn't quite make it. This is a drawing of the new alignment of the road, and to the right there is Fakkema, and it goes back and services all these properties back here. Next slide, please. So anyway, we have been going away. This action in front of the council today is just a simple contract extension. As we get closer to actually doing construction, we would then be doing an amendment with Harmsen for construction period services. So we have written a recommendation that the authorizing mayor to sign amendment number 2 for the professional services agreement with Harmsen LLC. That changes the agreement end date from December 31st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Any questions? I can help.
We certainly have heard Mr. Marshall's concern, and I don't think we have anybody else from the public to be concerned about here now. So we will turn to the council. Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that, Mr. Arvidsson. Help me understand a little bit of the activity between that 2016 and the March of 2019 date a little bit. I think that is important history. So in 2016, December 2016, we dedicated the right-of-way, understanding that there was some adverse challenges to building out that property, at market rate because of the fact that there really wasn't access. But at that point in 2016, there was already, I think, if I'm not correct, that was a dedicated easement that we actually just changed into the right-of-way. So it wasn't that there wasn't access back there. It was just a rudimentary road that was a easement at that time, correct?
I'm not sure about that. It was not my understanding that we had an easement back there. I think you have to even step back earlier in 2016 is we did identify that as a future city road on the comp plan, and that's usually our first step in moving forward with the capital plan. So if there was an easement, we would still go through the dedication process to do that. But those properties, I think most of them were actually accessing off of 20, but that was a very old entranceway and there was no traffic on it.
Okay, thank you for that. And then 2018, it ended up on the CIP, the Capital Improvements Plan.
Yep.
And then it seems to me as though it was on the CIP for some time in 2023, 2024. It was a ways out there. It was, ways out on the 6-year plan. But then in March of 2019, we had the opportunity to apply for .09 grants, which are economic development funds received through the county. And it seems to me as though that's when we decided to move this project up a little bit. Is that timing kind of right?
Can I speak to that, Brett?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. We did not receive the grant, but we also probably started to receive some communication from the developer. And then so 2 things were happening and pushing that forward. So the city did push it forward. I think our public works director, Mick Munkin, is on here and maybe has some history too on it.
I apologize, I'm coughing. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council, or council members. On this particular project, my understanding, this was actually a decision that was made as part of an economic development. And this project had gone through a process to get its approval prior to the city then making the commitment to then get the funding directly through the CIP process. Oh, excuse me. Oh, my apologies on that. Mr. Osborne, did I answer the question? I apologize for my coughing. I kind of lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
I believe the key here, Councilmember Wiesner, is that this was approved on multiple times and through the step process through the council. And certainly council could go in a different direction, but there's a long history here where it went through the approval process to get to the state where it's at now.
Yeah, I totally understand that, Mr. Osborne. I'm trying to make sure that I understand the history, right? Because it's, I think, important. We have somebody questioning the history of the project, and I know there's some other people in the town who are questioning the history of the project, so I'm trying to make sure that I understand the history, so, because obviously if I don't totally understand it, it's going to be a hard time for them. So just kind of bear with me if you wouldn't mind. So in 2018, we put it on the CIP. Then in 2019, it sounds like there was 2 things happened simultaneously. We had interest from a developer come in that was interested in developing that property. And at the same time, there was potential to get an economic development grant to help pay for the installation of that road, which would help stimulate that development. Would that be correct?
Yes, that is correct. And it brings jobs. It just wasn't enough jobs to be competitive enough on the county level, but certainly the city's building this for economic development benefit, and that's the reason why staff chose in 2019 to submit to the county under the Rural County Economic Development Grant for funding, but unfortunately it was not approved. So it went back to using city funding in the proposal, and that's where it is right now. And it's actually in the budget, in the 2021-2022 budget, capital plan and budget.
And it seems to me like what happened was in May of 2019, while that application was in process for the economic development funds, that's when we contracted out initially to Harmsen to start the engineering, because we knew obviously if we received those economic development funds that we'd have to have the engineering complete in order to actually be able to do the project. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And unfortunately, our city engineer couldn't make it tonight, and he has a lot of wealth of history, so the 3 of us are kind of pinch hitting here, so forgive us for
Well, I appreciate that.
answering the questions.
Yeah, well, and again, it's a couple of years of history, or actually, 5 years of history total on this project, so I get that. Then it seems to me as though what happened next was we proceeded with the engineering, but then when did we discover that we weren't going to receive the economic development grant? When was that decline come in?
Probably about 3 months after we did the application in 2019.
Yeah, so it kind of came in probably about a month. It sounds like about a month maybe after we had actually started the engineering process.
Yeah, so we did not build the grant fund in the formula for the 2020. When we did the 122 budget, by that time, we knew we weren't getting the grant funding.
And when we were having discussions with the developers in those initial stages, did they know that we were applying for their grant funding? I mean, was that part of that discussion, that we were attempting to apply for that, or?
I believe so, but I think staff felt and recommended that we go along with it with or without the grant funding. We did not make it contingent upon it. We thought it was a good candidate for the grant funding. But the recommendation from staff to the council was to do it with or without the grant funding.
Okay. Well, thanks for that timeline stuff. And then I just have a few questions about the business going in there that maybe some staff can help me with. Obviously, this is looks like a pretty big deal. I have not pulled the blueprints or anything, but it looks like a pretty big construction project, which obviously we get is going to be paying some jobs to build. Do you know, do they bring in out-of-town contractors to build that, or are they using local contractors?
There's quite a number of buildings. David, are you here? Or Mick, you probably know there's quite a number of buildings going in. I'm talking to our building official. She's doing quite a lot of approval on it right now for the buildings. Mick or Brett, if you can kind of expand on that.
I'm not know a lot of buildings, but it will be it's a U-Haul facility, so they will have a lot of trailers and trucks and of course support buildings to do that. But it's not a lot of building construction per se, but it will be a fairly large facility that serves our population. Of course, we have with our military population pretty mobile, so U-Haul is a very popular activity around here.
Well, obviously, they're adding some additional jobs. Just one last question. I appreciate everybody's patience. It seems to me that in 2009, I want to say, that there was a water main installed across the front of that property. The discussion about getting this property developed, has been around for a long time. The city, when it annexed it, brought the property in as a C5 zone, which was our highest commercial zone. There was, talks of a shopping center going in there. There was talks, obviously, of an auto dealership going in there. Then the APZ issue came up, which basically diminished the ability for anybody to build at market rate any of those things on that property because of the population density. You couldn't build a shopping center, for example, there. So I understand that it's been difficult to develop this property for years, but it seems to me like in 2009 that there was a water main extension done, and that water main extension was done for two purposes. One was to help make the property more developable, because at that point in time, extending the water was a very expensive proposition, and secondly, it was to connect a pressure zone to Allfield Road to make it so that we had better pressure down in our industrial zone off Goldie Road. Do we know, are there some latecomer fees or something to be made by the city for connection to that water main? It seems to me like it was pretty expensive when we put it in.
Yeah, I did ask the city engineer, and he did confirm that there is a fee on it, and I don't know if Brett or you or Nick can speak to that, but I did confirm with them. I think they're still calculating the dollar amount, and either one of you are welcome to add to that discussion.
I haven't been familiar with the development side of things. I've been working on the road, but yeah, there is a latecomers fee that would be collected as part of the development application. Right now, it's just preliminary reading, so we haven't seen the fees come in yet.
The city engineer did confirm he's prepared to do the calculation and include it as part of the process, the fee for connection.
Yeah, because my understanding was it's charged by the frontage of foot, right, on the main, which obviously that property's got a lot of frontage, and that should be a fairly large amount of money that the city could possibly be recouping, which they invested in trying to create economic development in that area. So that's something I'd certainly like to know moving forward. Obviously, I'm not going to stand in the way of this contract moving forward. We've already sunk money into this engineering and design, but I think there's some more questions that we're going to be wanting to ask as we get to the point of actually awarding a contract here, both addressing Mr. Marshall's concerns as well as understanding the overall benefits for the city in implementing this, other than the fact that we are going to get access to a park area that we currently really don't have access to. Right now, you'd actually have to drive in a driveway you're not supposed to drive in, and then would have to drive along a kind of a grassy path to get back in there. So it certainly makes sense for our citizens to have access to that. But I certainly appreciate everybody's time and patience, and thanks for putting up with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Brett or Mr. Osborne, usually when there is property that wants to develop, the city usually goes into some type of partnership, or like if there's a 8-inch water main and we really need a 10 because of the development, and so we pay them the difference to put in the 10, or sidewalks and streets and lights. And so how much are we, is this just an access road, or is it a proper street with sidewalks and stuff? And usually the development puts money into that, or they pay for it, and we just supervise and tell them what we want. So this seems a little strange that, yes, I know we approved it, but I know someone was trying to build storage sheds back there and figured we'd put in a road if he built it, and he started to build it, and we didn't put in the road. So where is the line between the city requiring the developer to pay for this stuff that benefits them and their business, and to us to get help to have, I mean, new neighborhoods, they have to put all that stuff in. I mean, and the fire departments make sure it's wide enough, and you've got to have parking, and, you know, so I guess I just remember a right-of-way, but I don't remember that there were applications put in, and it just seems like we're missing the boat if they're not being charged to help develop this. So someone could explain that, please.
Mr. Munkin or Mr. Arvidsson, either one of you, I can go, or either one of you want to go first, that's fine with me too.
I think the impetus on this thing was the economic development. Normally we would require this. This road is considered very minimal. Matter of fact, we've had discussions with the developer about making it bigger and more accessible for the trucks. And we said, well, be glad to do more for you, but you're going to have to pay for the upgrade, because this is not a fancy street by any means, shape, or form. So to me, the issue was, we were trying to promote development in the area, and we're making that investment. And I wasn't party to the decision to move forward on a policy basis. Mr. Osborne would probably better to do that. But, that's, you are correct that normally we do require this type of thing to be borne by the developer.
I do want to add a comment on that too. Part of it, I don't have the full history on it, but I do know that part of this development early on, property, and this is regardless of which development's on there now, there is a access issue. There's existing access to that property on the state route. That state route is considered a safety issue. It's actually very rare in Whidbey Island in particular that you have fatalities, and we have 2 fatalities on record in that area. So access on SR20 is a critical element that be removed. Part of that, it's a legal requirement of the state, if there is another access available to those properties, that they be removed and not permitted to get access on 5 or onto 20. This road does fulfill that service, and from information I've seen, it appears that early on was part of the decision to move forward with this road, as well as economic development, which this is fulfilling. And again, it is being made at a minimum, with just enough to allow for access of those properties, to allow them to develop without having to get access onto the state road.
Okay,
And
so
I concur with both of those comments.
So I've understood that Highway 20, WASDOT would not let them have access when Mr. Douglas wanted to put in the storage units. And I understand that Gary Oaks had trouble because they wanted entrances and exits onto Highway 20, and they said, no, you have to do it on the side road. So I understand all of that. But what I don't understand is, where are the assurances? If we're just putting in wide enough for a pickup, not even a 2-lane road, just a 1-lane road, just to help with access, if they're going to develop it, then they will pay to develop the street? Is that, I mean, what kind of engineering are we talking about here?
I'll start with that one. I think what Brett Arvidsson was saying is that, and that was the direction from me and the mayor and I, is that we've planned this road coming in, let's make it minimal as much as possible. So this is a very minimal road. The developers asked us to expand the road, and staff's point was, and our direction from the mayor and I is that if they want to expand the road, that's on their dime. They can pay for it. We made a policy decision, the council's made a policy decision to put in a road, and the road we're putting in is the minimal size that we can deal with a minimal length to accommodate the multiple property owners. So, and they're under obligation to pay any additional amount if they want it larger. So I think they're probably going to live with it, but if they come back in the plans and want to do it, certainly that's their option, to expand the road. And then as far as paying for it, the council's made ongoing decisions to make this as a city project, but certainly the council could go in a different direction. So it's totally a policy decision. Staff made it clear that economic development and safety reasons are the reasons why staff has recommended this road be paid for by the city. But certainly it's a policy decision of the council whether or not to go ahead and pay for this road.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple questions because most of mine have been asked previously. Can you confirm what Mr. Marshall said about the fact that of those parcels, the city owns some and the rest all belong to ultimately one individual or organization?
I think Brett mentioned the ownership. I think it used to be multiple ownerships, and the properties, most of it's been bought up by one property owner. I couldn't really hear Mr. Marshall's response very well on his presentation to really verify that. But I think, Brett, in your summary, you kind of talked about, Mr. Arvidsson, I should say, we're in the formal setting here. So I believe you kind of talked about it. Certainly can go back to that slide where you did some research on the number of property owners, but it used to be more, and they've been bought up by one property owner. So, and they do show it in the plans. The property contiguous on the side of the highway is basically, and we don't have a copy of the plans that we could show, but certainly they have the whole area all the way from the current development where there's a storage area all the way north to the city's property. It appears to be in one property owner now.
That's correct.
Okay, and for a time, I believe the city logo was placed on their signage. That kind of implies a partnership. Is there a reason why our city logo is being used?
I don't know if I don't mean to interrupt, but I don't know if staff's having the same issue. It's really hard to hear, like they're echoing. Lots of noise on the video feeds for everybody.
People need to mute their mics when they're not speaking.
I don't think we understood anything.
I'll repeat the question. For some time, the city logo was placed on their signage. Was there a reason why our city logo was placed on their signage? Was there a partnership of some sort I'm not aware of?
I can speak to the city logo issue. We did ask them to remove the logo, and our legal counsel is working with them on protecting our logo. And Hillary Evans, if you have any more to add on that issue, you're welcome to.
That's right. We sent a we sent a demand letter last week and we received almost immediate response from them saying that they'll remove the logo.
That has been confirmed, it has been removed.
If memory serves, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, on the capital improvement plan, it was budgeted for about $482,000 for this project. Does that still seem about accurate?
I didn't hear all your,
Sorry, let me speak a little slower and try to be a little more clear here. So on the CIP,
Okay.
if I remember correctly, there was $482,000 budgeted for this project. Does that still seem accurate, including the $78,000 for this engineering performance?
I'll defer to Mr. Monken or Mr. Arvidsson.
Right now, our engineer's estimate for construction is running about $700,000. We are looking at an option of possibly shortening the road a little bit and building a future phase to it. But right now, the 480 seems a little bit on the low side compared to the actual costs we've been seeing this last fall.
And we really won't know the actual cost till we go out to bid, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to do an option where we don't build the full 2,000. We just serve to that one parcel that needs service immediately. So if we had to, we could shorten it.
And finally, this is kind of piggybacking on what Councilmember Munns was talking about. Is there any other sources of funding that we're going after? Are there any other grants we can try to get from, or is it even possible to approach the developer about partnering as far as cost goes, or is that not even an option?
And we can continue to apply. The most qualified one is the one we applied for, is the Rural County Economic Development Grant. We have pending purchase of the boatyard at the marina as part of that grant. Cities received other grants related to the Rural Economic Development grant. So we've been highly successful. But like I said, we applied at least once when I was here and maybe before I was here on this project, and it never was approved. So staff isn't actively looking for additional grants, and we put it into the financing, and I think our finance director would have to look at the detail there, but I imagine I think they're doing impact fees, and probably Wreath would be my guess. But if David Goldman has that information on the funding, some of it's been bring forward balance, so it's hard to see the detail there, but if you can offer some detail on the funding of this, Dave, Mr. Goldman, I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Blaine. So the current, let's see here. So the current budget we have is $701,000. It's been updated since the capital improvement plan was published last year. So there's been I think there was a budget amendment recently earlier this year that upped the budget. So the funding sources include impact fees, funding from the streets fund, and small amount from city funds, but the majority of the funding is coming from transportation impact fees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. What is the shelf life if we pay for the engineering? I remember we were hot to get 7th Street that the greenhouse is on. Isn't that 7th Street? And we got engineering plans, and we got a grant for that, and we were looking forward, and then we got nothing, and that whole project got dumped. We had a chance to get some money from the county, and we didn't have all our checks in the box, so we missed that fund, so we'll have to wait to apply again for one of their grants to get that done now. It seems like that project is back up and going, but there's a shelf life. When you do the engineering, it only lasts for so many years. And so I just want to be sure that for a price tag of $700,000, when we only thought it was less than $500,000, that's a big increase. to put a road in that they've got an application maybe, but we're not sure they're going to develop it. We seem to be able to go in and be able to take care of the Gary Oak trees and stuff. I mean, I know we want to bring businesses in, but somewhere when the price tag starts rising, you need to take a second look at it. I mean, I know I'm for developing this and getting it. It's a minimum road. We can shorten it, but I don't know. When it jumps just without knowing, having bids over $200,000, that seems like a lot to me. So I'm just questioning, what's the shelf life for the engineering plans that we would be paying for this street?
This is Brett Arvidsson again. The plans themselves, unless we have some major change in standards, this is a road, and we can put them on the shelf for at least a couple years. It's one of those things where, if we ever change our standards or the county change their standards, something like that, then we can bring them out. But they won't go obsolete tomorrow. Are they going to last 20 years? Probably not. But if we wait a year to 2 years, that's fine. But there are other implications it's waiting too. So again, with the shelf life of these plans, like I say, it's a very minor road on an area that's not changing very much. So it could be done tomorrow, or it could be done next year.
So, and council previously approved $78,322.73 for the design. And the recommendation for you is to extend the time because of the coordination with the developer and the road issue and such. Staff wasn't able to implement it as soon as possible. So the request before you is to extend the time.
Councilor Stuckey.
But just to confirm, we're extending the time. This has no extension on the dollar amount paid for those services. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mayor Pro Tem? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Servadius.
Mr. Goldman, you mentioned that I think you phrased it, or I'll paraphrase this, maybe it wasn't how you said it, the lion's share was coming from transportation impact fees, is what's currently budgeted. Is that correct? And can you tell us about what that dollar amount is, and that is existing fees that we've already collected or fees that will be collected moving forward? David Goldman?
Was that question for me? Because I didn't. It was
Yep,
hard to
sorry.
hear.
It was for you.
You had mentioned when you brought up the budget, when you were answering Councilmember Stuckey's question, the 701,000, with the lion's share of that was impact fees. Are those impact fees that we've already collected? And if so, are we able to obviously then use them for this project? Or are they impact fees that you anticipate, we as a city anticipate collecting moving forward?
Oh, that was really hard to hear. Yeah, I mean, if you're asking if impact fees are appropriate, they're eligible to be used for this type of project. If we're going to have impact fees moving forward, I can look up the current balance of that.
Yeah, David,
So-
we wanted to verify whether they were already impact fees collected or new impact fees. Good question. And I believe we do have a time frame on it, so it's part of the formula. And talking to the previous engineer, his point to me is we need to spend that money before we lose it. So, but certainly you can verify. But I believe it's
David,
impact fees already
Mr. Goldman.
received.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
they already received, so they're already in the project. These are current impact fees.
And so, Mr. Osborne, can you hear me, Mr. Goldman? Tim, can
yes.
you turn up the gain? So traditionally, there is a timeline, I thought, for impact fees to be used. So when you made that statement, I'm trusting you. I'm just trying to get my head around a dollar amount of impact fees that are out there that need to be used, or are we anticipating collecting the lion's share of this amount from new development? Kind of coming back to what Ms. Munns asked originally.
I believe in answering your question is we collected money and we're utilizing it, and this road goes into that area. It's a new road coming in, so we can utilize impact fees, and that's what staff has programmed for the lion's share of the payment of this road.
Hey,
in lieu of not
Miss-
receiving grant funding.
Mr. Osborne? Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
How about you, Mr. Goldman? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so Councilor Servadius asked if these are impact fees that have already been collected.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's the short answer he was looking for. These are impact fees that we have already collected. I'm going to turn to Councilor Harmsen.
Thank you, Mayor. The audio, it sounds like not just in here, but everywhere is garbage tonight, and I'm not sure why. So I would really ask everyone on the call, unless you are physically answering a question, to keep yourself muted, because there's a lot of interference coming across. I have a couple of questions. Is the entity developing the property, is that Americo Real Estate, the same person that owns the majority of these properties? That's not directed at anyone in particular, just whoever happens to know the
Yeah,
answer.
Mr. Arvidsson, can you fill that?
Excuse me. Unfortunately, I'm not involved with the development review. I'm just doing the capital project for it. So what's actually happening on the site and who's the developer, I'm unsure of. So I would defer to the Mr. Krull or the planning department, because they are probably more in handle with that. That's actually being handled, that review is actually being handled by our contract reviewer.
So what we can do, if you wanted to defer the motion, we can probably put this on the 14th agenda and make sure we have staff available to answer some of the questions that we're unable to answer tonight. Because it looks like this needs to be approved before the 31st. So we could continue the item if you wanted to, and hopefully have the city engineer and make sure we have the development side here, development services here, to field a lot of those questions that you're asking. I don't think Ray's on. Ray, are you on? Ray,
Okay,
Muhlenberg?
Mr. Osborne, it doesn't look like, before we try to answer that, I'm going to go back to Councilor Harmsen, and we've got a couple more questions, I think, that you need to hear. Councilor Harmsen?
Okay.
Thank you. I suspect that revisiting this next week, with an engineer and with someone from development services would be a good idea. The reason I asked who the entity was that wanted to develop the property is because it certainly, I understand that this is a unique location. Many of the parcels are landlocked. There are, because of its location on the highway, there are special considerations. And so, yes, there are ways we normally do things with access and the developer, and they pay for that. But this is kind of a unique case. If someone could maybe lay that out for us next week, that would be great. But the concern is, are we footing the bill to build an access road for $1 billion corporation that wants to develop the property and is perfectly capable of footing the bill themselves? I think that is, I'm getting a nod from Mr. Marshall. That's kind of what it comes down to. So if we are building a road not to benefit any one particular property owner, but to enhance the economic development and accessibility for everyone and to unlock the potential of that, then that makes sense. But if we are doing this specifically for a billion-dollar entity that's perfectly capable of doing it themselves, I think that is the heart of the concern. That's the heart of my concern anyway. So I hope you guys could hear all that. And those would be the concerns that I would want addressed if we revisit this next week. Thank you. I'm done.
Mayor Pro Tem.
If we need a formal motion, I would make it to move this item to our next council meeting on December 14th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move item number, consent agenda item number 4E to the next regular city council meeting on the, what day is that, the 16th? 14th, on December 14th. And that motion and second, not seeing any questions, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed?
Aye from Erica.
Okay, that passes unanimously. So we will move on then in our agenda to item number 5, which is mayor comments and council comments and staff comments. So I'll start with the fact that it's remembrance of Pearl Harbor Day. Thank you to the Oak Harbor Lions Club for placement of flags along our city streets on this 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor Day. Local events, shop local Oak Harbor. Consider shopping locally this holiday season for gifts and holiday meals and treats. The Green Ticket Cash Giveaway, vote for your favorite toy soldier, and Snowflake Hunt are going on now through December 17th. New Year's Eve fireworks will be displayed on Friday, December 31st at 9 p.m. Student shout-outs. I'd like to acknowledge some of our local student athletes' accomplishments. The Oak Harbor High School sailing team finished 7th in the Northwest ISA Fall Championships in Portland. The Oak Harbor track and field team is sending 9 of its members to the state cross-country meet. And Oak Harbor High School cheerleader Melanie Alanis has been selected to participate in the Walt Disney World Holiday Parade. Congratulations to all of these students and to the Oak Harbor School District. Upcoming city council meetings, the second regular meeting of city council will be held on Tuesday, December 14th at 6 p.m. The monthly workshop is currently scheduled for Wednesday, December 15th at 2 p.m. However, we would like to discuss potentially canceling that in just a few moments later on in the agenda. Mayor's comment box online is available on the city website via the search box under How Do I, under the second column labeled Contact the City. We're hiring. Find out more about available positions on our website at www.oakharbor.org. And with that, I'll turn to council for city council comments. Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to do a shout out to all the people involved in the city for putting our lights up at Beeksma Park. It really looks great. It really makes a festive look in the center of our community. So for all those that helped getting that looking so nice, thank you very much.
Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Mack. The Christmas decorations look great. The decorations on all the light poles look great. The lighted boat parade this past weekend was wonderful. as anybody who's seen me tuning in from home, I have cats, so I can't have nice things, and I haven't decorated for Christmas for years. So I kind of live vicariously through everyone else's Christmas decorations, and I love it so much. It makes me happy. And I love the student shout out segment of your comments. I would love it if you would make that a regular thing.
Thank you, Councilor Eisen.
And I fully support canceling next week's workshop if there's nothing on the agenda. And I wanted to send a heartfelt thank you to Miss Millie Goebel for her service on this council, while juggling a full-time job and school and all the things. It's really a challenge, and she handled it beautifully, and we were very lucky to have her for the time that we had her. And welcome to Brian Stuckey. Looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Eisen. Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that we addressed one of the public comments we had at the beginning of the meeting, the coal in our stocking. And I just want to make sure that the public knows that we are listening. We understand the impact that these rates, have on the people in our community, right? And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I didn't want it to go unnoticed. I will say that the ARPA committee is working on trying to figure out a way possibly to use some of the ARPA funds to bring before council to help offset some sewer rate costs for people in our community, for everybody in our community. So again, I just wanted to not have that comment go left unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. Anyone else for council comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. It looks great when the Lions put up the flags around town. I'm so proud of our city to have a display like that. I also want to thank, because today's the 80th anniversary, the ANA, PBY, and Navy League held a joint meeting at the Elks Club, and they did a beautiful remembrance of everyone that was lost at Pearl Harbor, but also the Korean and Vietnam War, and it was done very, very nicely. I was pleased to attend that. And remember, if you have an extra $5 or $10 or even $2, Help House could sure use it to help buy food for those in need. It's just heart-rending to think that someone could go without food at all, but much less for a holiday where you spend with your family. So anything you can drop off, they have lists, or you can just drop off some cash or a check. They would appreciate it very, very much. We do about 500 baskets, so thank you, and that's all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else? Okay.
Oh, Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
Oh, thank you. I have a little bit, so I'm sorry if I pause. It sounds a little funny. But I just wanted to apologize for not being there. The wreath looks beautiful, and I wish I could be there to smell it. I just love that it always smells so good when that comes in the room. I also wanted to apologize for not being there and being at the last few meetings. I was out of state traveling around with my kids while they live their best lives, and I foot the bill and take them. But I also couldn't be there tonight because my oldest daughter has come home and now is really sick. And so I didn't want to come and give our newest council member, Stuckey, any germs to welcome him to council and sit right by him. So I thought it'd be best. I actually just gotten home before the meeting started from taking her to the doctor, and she'll be fine, but I just, out of caution, didn't want to be there. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm sorry I don't get to be there in person and see you all, but I will be back soon, hopefully. And I also wanted to thank Councilmember Goebel for her time on council, and welcome Councilmember Stuckey. It's nice to see you, even though it's through the camera. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wassinger. Then we will move on, I believe, at this time to, I think it is our discussion about the workshop. And we have a suggestion from staff, because we don't have any items scheduled to my knowledge. So I'll turn to Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to cancel the December 15th workshop.
Second.
Got a motion and 2 seconds to cancel the December 5th, what is the date on that? 15th workshop. Motion made by Councilor Servadius. I'm going to give that second to Councilor Wiesner. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor say aye. Okay, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. We will now move to item number 6A, ordinance number 1941. We have 2 scheduled public hearings actually this evening. The first is Budget Amendment Number 4, Departmental Requests, an ordinance of the City of Oak Harbor amending the biennial budget for 2021 and 2022, adopting an updated wage and salary schedule and plan of classification, providing for severability and establishing an effective date. And for that, we have our Finance Director, Mr. David Goldman. Mr. Goldman?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. David Goldman, Finance Director. This is the 4th budget amendment for the 2021-22 biennial budget. So as part of the biennial budget, there's a process that cities are required to go through called the mid-biennial process. And actually the next ordinance is more related to that, more focused on that than this one. But as part of the processes we do for the mid-biennial, we ask departments to submit requests for unbudgeted needs for the second year of the biennial, basically 2022. In addition, the Interpretive Center project, which is adjacent to the Clean Water Facility, will be reprogrammed to a future year, and that'll be determined during the 2023 and 2024 biennial budget process, which will be done in the last half of next year. So because of that, the project funds that are currently sitting in that project will be returned to their respective funds. And also just a reminder, adjustments do not change the total of the fund, do not change the budget total of a fund, while amendments do. So for the amendment for the year 2021, it's proposed to return $700,000 of funds from the Interpretive Center to the original funding sources, which would be the Real Estate Excise Tax 1 fund, the Real Estate Excise Tax 2 fund, the Water Fund, the Solid Waste Fund, and the Storm Drain Fund. You can see the amounts per fund on the screen and also in your backup. And you can also see what the amended budgets will look like after these funds are returned back to them. And the total for this 2021 amendment is $700,000. As far as the department requests go, here's a list of the requests. These will be adjustments, not amendments, but adjustments for 2022. There's $180,000 of using Marina fund balance to fund the debt service for the 2021 LTG general obligation refunding bonds that were approved about 6 months ago by the City Council. $123,000 of use of lodging tax balance for the 2022 round of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee grant awards. And the rest of these requests are from general fund. About $25,000 to pay for the Washington State Auditor to come on down next year and audit our 2021 financials. That's based on an exit conference that was done last month, just based on their guidance as far as how much those costs will likely look like for next year. About $10,000 for the fire department for increased costs for on-call firefighters, basically cost of living increases and minimum wage type of interactions with that. And also, there were some training programs that were either canceled or delayed last year, or this year actually, due to the ongoing COVID crisis. So actually both years. So they're anticipating this training to be reinstituted for next year. So they're asking for some funds to help fund that training. For the police department, we have $64,000. These are for SCORE expenses and the ICOM user fees. That's offset somewhat by a reduction in payroll expenses due to just due to the changing of the jail organization. About $20,000 for development services for anticipated consultant-related costs for building plan reviews, and about $123,000 for parks for various items that are contained within the backup, such as, well, utility costs for the splash pad, kitty chip replenishments at the playgrounds, some facility improvements, tools, and some overtime for contingency and unanticipated expenses. So with that, the recommended motion would be to adopt ordinance number 1941, budget amendment number 4, amending the 2021-22 biennial budget and adopting an updated wage and salary schedule and plan of classification. And as always, I am and staff is available to field any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing and confirm that we have no comments from our public regarding this item.
That's correct, Mayor. We received no public comments on this item.
Okay. And we have no one here that wishes to comment regarding this. I will close the public meeting and turn to the council for questions. Yes, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for that presentation, Mr. Goldman. To certainly understand the difference between the adjustment and the amendment, right? And so I understand a lot of this is just moving money around, but there's a couple of these items that I guess I've got a question, such as the $50,200 adjustment for splash pad related increased water consumption. If I remember right, the splash pad recirculates a lot of the water, does it not?
Yeah, that question would probably be best answered by Don, our parks manager.
I didn't hear, I might be able to field that, Councilor Wiesner.
I didn't hear the question either.
All right, so our parks manager's here.
But it doesn't recirculate. So the $50,000 for splash pad water, that's an adjustment, was that above and beyond a number we had budgeted for that?
Yes. It was about $50,000 more than what was budgeted for it.
So we're spending $100,000 a year on water for the splash pad?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. I'll have to digest that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question, Mayor. Erica.
Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
Hasn't the splash pad been closed due to COVID? So I'm just wondering where they come from, or that's all.
Okay, it sounds
Ma'am,
like
I didn't hear that question.
the question hasn't.
I'm so sorry. I'm just pondering. I remember that the splash pad has been closed due to the COVID. So I'm wondering, is that just a full years of water usage and how that number came to be? I just curious. Thank you. That's all.
We ran it a full year this year. Actually we didn't. We didn't turn it on until July 1st, and it took a proclamation from the mayor to turn it on during that heat wave we had the first week of July. But we ran it from 10:30 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. That splash pad does not recycle water. The water comes up and it goes right down the drain into the clean water plant. We did have 2 mainline breaks that affected the splash pad, and that they took a couple of weeks to identify because we didn't even know that they were there because of the sandy condition of our soil. Water tends to soak through faster than it does puddle. But I am confident that what we spent this year is probably a pretty good number to move forward year to year. And I am actively looking for some ways to subsidize the cost of the water, and we'll be bringing that to the city council and the park board in the next, I would say, 3 to 4 meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wassinger. Back to Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I guess I'm just shocked because the quick math, we opened on July 1st, and if I remember correctly, we closed the splash park on September the 6th or the 7th. So we're talking 64 days of operation here, 2 months, $100,000 in 2 months of operation. That, I'd certainly like to reach out to some other communities that have splash parks. Centralia or Chehalis, I think, would be a good one. It's a very similar sized facility, and get an idea from them if they're going through $50,000 a month worth of water, because that just seems like an incredible amount of money to me.
It did. I'm sorry, there's feedback here, but one of the things we have unique to our splash pad is the water is not recycled. In a lot of other splash pads, in our part of the world, the water is recycled. We don't recycle that water, so therefore our water bill is going to be considerably higher than it would be otherwise. Now, we did have a couple of mainline breaks that were significant. These were 6-inch main lines that feed the splash pad at 104 psi, and they're buried underneath the slopes surrounding the splash pad. So we didn't see them for 2 weeks, but as soon as we saw them, we shut down the pad and got it repaired. But and we got a water credit through the finance department to subsidize some of that cost. But this is going to be an ongoing challenge we have. And again, we're working on a couple of ways to subsidize the cost, and we're looking on some low cost ways to conserve some of the water, at the same time protecting the asset as far as the community's enjoyment of it. But when you don't recycle water and it runs 7 days a week, it is going to use a lot of water.
Yes, follow up.
Just a follow-up comment. I guess that just blows my mind. We built a state-of-the-art clean water facility, designed to conserve every place we can, and then on top of that, we're a community that purchases our water from someplace else, where a lot of communities are operating off of well water or something, where the community is not having to purchase that water. And in a community where we're purchasing water from somebody else, I guess that just blows my mind that we installed a splash park that we're not recirculating the water in any way, shape, or form. We're not even putting it into an underground storage tank to use it for watering our park. We're just dumping it down the drain. So, I appreciate your comments there, Don, and I appreciate you working on figuring out a way to cut that cost. And I guess again, I just got to say that just absolutely blows my mind. Absolute shock to me. Absolute shock.
It is totally inappropriate and unacceptable. And having spent a lot of time in the desert Southwest, it made me cringe. So we're not resting on this. It's something we're going to do everything we can, and we'll return and report our progress. And again, we have some plans to subsidize it, and we just got to get those in place. And sometime I'll under promise and over deliver here before March. So a couple of months before we have to activate it for the season, we will return and report and let you know what our plans are, and bring a couple of items of business to the city council for consideration to subsidize this cost.
Okay, Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Don, appreciate all your effort on that, but I'm all in with Councilmember Wiesner. I think we really, really need to look at a cost-effective way to recycle this water. We've got things down there that need water during the summertime, like some of our planters, some of our lawns, and perhaps we can even use it to wash things down, dirty sidewalks or whatever after events. So maybe for the future here, again, just it looks wasteful, and I think we really seriously need to look at some ways to recycle that water down there the best we can.
Yes, sir. That water actually does get recycled, but it goes through the clean water plant.
Okay, well, that's good, but maybe it can go elsewhere instead of funneling into our plant. But in other words, I hear you. Bringing some new things, new alternatives to the council would be great, and see if there's any, just explore different options that we'd have for other uses other than running it back through our plant. Thank you.
Councilor Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 1941.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 1941. Motion by Councilor Heisen, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, looks like, I think that passes unanimously. We will move on then to item number 6C, ordinance number 1942, budget amendment number 4, mid-biennial, an ordinance of the City of Oak Harbor amending the biennial budget for 21-22, adopting an updated wage and salary schedule and plan of classification, providing for severability and establishing an effective date. Again, we will turn to our Finance Director, Mr. Goldman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a budget amendment number 5 of the 2021-22 biennial budget. So per Washington State Law, RCW 35A 34-130, and the Oak Harbor Municipal Code, that's up there on the screen, the mayor shall prepare a mid-biennial budget amendment for City Council review and approval. This must occur between September 1st and December 31st, 2021. This amendment adjusts for the second year biennial beginning fund balance. Those figures are estimated during the budget process for the 21-22 biennial budget, and those figures were estimated in the fall of 2020, about September. The figures for the 2021 beginning fund balance and the figures for 2022 beginning fund balance. And also per the Government Accounting Standards Board and the State Auditor, the beginning fund balance figures represent the amount of a fund's unencumbered balance, meaning that the balance is not considered non-spendable, restricted, reserved, or encumbered. So funds of note, I split the next couple of slides up between operating funds and capital project funds. So you can see the first fund, the biggest fund we have is the general fund. And as discussed in July, during the mid-year revenue report for 2020, the general fund came in about $1.5 million better than anticipated. 40% of that was due to expenses being under, and 60% was due to revenues being over, being better, mostly sales tax revenues. For the beginning fund balance of 2022, we're estimating that that figure should be revised by $2.6 million. So in 2020, 2020 is $1.5 million of the $2.6 million. So that means for 2021, we're expecting revenues to be better and expenditures to be under by about $1.1 million. For the streets funds, about 180,000 due to expenditures being under. For the Transportation Benefit District Fund, we're looking at revenues being over budget and also expenditures being under budget. Water and sewer, it's mostly due to expenditures being under budget. Solid waste is the only fund that had a downward adjustment, and that was primarily due to the 2020 results. And it was related to the garbage and recycling contract with Island County that was also discussed at the mid-year review in July. We anticipate that the ending year 2021 results to be in line with budget. So this figure is mostly due to the 2020 results. And also we have storm drain. That was increasing by about $300,000 due to expenditures being under budget. Now for the capital project funds, now keep in mind that capital projects are typically multi-year and are funded in the first of the year. Well, funded in the first year of those multi-year capital projects. So because of that, we have to account for the revenues and expenses in the first year the revenues are received in order to have a balanced budget. So when you see the amounts for the capital projects funds going up by these large amounts, it typically indicates that, yes, we have multi-year projects that are receiving those funds up front and will spend it over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, depending on the project, or project costs coming in lower than anticipated. So for those capital project funds, so for these capital projects funds have been transferred into them for projects and little has been spent because it's either the first year of the project or the project's taking a little bit longer than anticipated to complete. Now, as far as the 2 REIT funds go, these funds are increasing based on what we discussed in the last budget amendment, where funds are being returned to them from the interpretive center, but also because revenues came in a bit better than expected, and also some expenditures were a little bit lower than expected as well. Now, we've also attached a REIT report that we use pretty much every year to report on certain uses of the REIT funds. REIT stands for Real Estate Excise Tax, and there's 2 REITs. REIT 1 is the first 0.25% tax, and REIT 2 is the second 0.25% tax, and these are charged on real estate transactions. So per Washington state law, the city may use REIT 2 funds for REIT 1 defined projects that are not also included within REIT 2 defined projects, as long as they prepare a report consistent with the requirements of the above section of Washington state law. Basically what that means is there's slightly different definitions of what a capital project is in REIT 1 and then REIT 2. So because of those slightly different definitions, specifically the term recreational facilities and trails is included in the REIT 1 definition of capital projects, but only the term parks is included in the REIT 2 definition of capital projects. Now, some of the projects I'm going to show on the next slide, they could be considered by some as parks, but out of abundance of caution, we're including this report as part of the mid-biennial process. And keep in mind, we've also done this report in the past. It happened last year and the year before that to report on certain uses of REIT 2 funds on REIT 1 projects, REIT 1 defined projects. So for example, we have the Harbor Heights Park Improvement Project. 95,000 of REIT 2 funds will be used for that project, and 625,000 of REIT 2 funds will be used for that project in 2023. The 95,000 was for 2022. Now there might be recreational facilities as part of that improvement. So even though the word parks appears in both, because recreational facilities does not appear in REIT 2, we're putting this into this report. The senior center roof replacement, again, recreational facility. Shoreline Midway to Regatta, that could be a trail, for example. And Smith Park playground equipment. Is that part of a park or is that a recreational facility? Just out of an abundance of caution, we're including these 4 items in the report. Because we don't want the state auditor to come back years later and say, wait a second, that's a little off. You know, if we include it in the report, we don't really have to worry about something happening in the future. In regards to finding that something is disallowed because we included it in the report. So with that, The recommended motion is on the screen, and staff is available to field any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing and confirm with our clerk that we've received no public comments, if that's the case.
That's correct, Mayor. We received no public comments on this item.
Okay. And then seeing no public comment here in the chambers, I will close the public hearing and turn to the council for questions or comments or motions. Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 1942.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and 2 seconds again to adopt ordinance number 1942. That motion is made by Councilor Heisen. I'll give that second to Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
From Erica, that passes unanimously. Thank you, council. We will then move on to item number 7. We have 3 resolutions for consideration this evening. These do not require a formal public hearing. However, we accept a public comment for each item. First is Resolution 21-28, a resolution of the City of Oak Harbor authorizing funds from the Creative Arts Fund to repaint, repair, and install the sculpture known as Meditation. And for that, I think we have our Interim Public Works Director, Mick Monken, to present this. Mick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, this is an artwork that the city had acquired several years ago, and we are in the last phase of this art piece of now ready for its placement. The artwork is, as you see here, this is what's been sitting in the yard. This is part of the Joseph Kimbrough collection. It's a steel structure. It's approximately a 3x3 in size, and we have been working with the Oak Harbor Boys and Girls Club for the
Mr. Monken,
Yes.
do you have slides you want to show?
They're just coming up now,
the
looks
slides.
like.
Oh,
Just up.
sorry, I was seeing them on my screen, but apparently I didn't connect through. So going back again on the introduction, the photo you're seeing there is the art piece sits now in the yard. And it's been there for a few years. It's been out in the weather. It's, as I was mentioning, it's a 3x3 structure. We've worked with the Boys and Girls Club of Oak Harbor for the placement, which would be in the front of their facility, right by their entrance. And because it has been sitting for several years, it's in need of some finish and repair work. Pictures you see on the side show the condition it's in right now. Structurally, it's in fine shape. It just needs to have some cleaning and painting and reapplication of, excuse me, enamel paints. So the costs you're seeing there are the estimates to get it prepared for the painting, the permitting, the transportation, and getting it loaded up and moved to the site, and the installation. The estimate for that is $12,000. The forthcoming efforts that are needed for this to be completed outside of the resolution is we have an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club, which they have signed. It still will require the city's signature on that, and that will come following this action. And then, of course, with the approval of the resolution, then would be the installation. The recommended action of staff is shown on the screen here, and I'll be glad to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Monken. So before we turn to the council, I'll verify that we've gotten no input from our public. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. No input from the public.
Okay, and seeing none here, we will turn to the council. Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that presentation, Mr. Monken. I've got a question. Maybe you know the answer. Maybe Mr. Osborne. the decision for putting this at the Boys and Girls Club, I mean, how did that come about? I'm always concerned when we're taking a public piece of art and putting it on a private piece of property. Why'd we end up there?
Okay, just right now, sorry, go ahead. You ready for a response?
Yes.
Okay. To answer your question about the placement, right now, the discussion right now is the repairs of it for $12,000, and that's what's before you today. And then then staff will come back and discuss the placement and discuss the approval for the agreement. And the agreement was already drafted by the previous city attorney, and I don't know whether our city attorney now could do that, but I think the agreement covered the issue with placing it on it. We still retain ownership of the piece, but we would place it on the Boys and Girls Club, and that was a recommendation from the Arts Commission to place it in that location. And right now, we're just asking for the funding for the repairs, and then we'll come back and council can make a decision on finalizing the placement at the Boys and Girls Club.
Well, thanks for that, Mr. Osborne, but it seems to me like part of this $12,000 request is for $5,000 of placement, and so what you're asking us is to approve $5,000 for placement of a statue that we really don't know for sure where it's going to go yet, is what you're basically saying. And then, I have some concerns, and I haven't read through that agreement, but, ingress, egress, I mean, the Boys and Girls Club is willing to permit access by any public onto their property at any time, day or night, to view this public sculpture? Because if it's anything other than that, if there's restrictions for people stepping foot on the private property in order to view a public piece of art, I guess that's where I have the concern at.
I think what we can do, if you want to, we can postpone this item and come back and deal with the agreement for the placement and the additional costs at the same time. And Nick, I'm open to your input on that too.
Surely we can take it in that direction so that we could have it prepared so that, as the city administrator said, that the council would make the ultimate decision of where it is going to be. Again, as mentioned in my report, the agreement has not been signed by the city.
Well, I'll certainly yield to the rest of the council as to their feelings, but, we're normally not in the habit of approving a budget for placement of something when we haven't approved the placement as of yet. So I'll yield. Thank you.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. I don't disagree with Mr. Wiesner. It's got to be placed somewhere, though, so there's going to be some cost with probably pouring a pad and putting it there. So the number that stood out to me actually was the 22 hours to paint. If it's sandblasted, it's pretty prepped already, except for wiping it down and cleaning it. I was surprised to see 22 hours of painting. It's not a giant line item. It's $2,300. Of course, it all adds up, but the Creative Arts Fund and the Arts Commission, we entrust them to do the research and spend those dollars as they best see fit, and then we approve those decisions. So, I would be okay with moving forward on this because it's going to have to be installed somewhere. And I do believe Mr. Wiesner had some valid points as far as just overall access. It sits right out there on, is that Ernst Ely? I think it's on Ely. But there would be people that probably would want to walk up. I see in here there's a something buffer. What is that buffer, Mr. Arvidsson or Mr. Osborne, whoever wants to take a swing at that? Was it called a connection buffer? There's a yellow part in the packet here. Sorry, I'm jumping back to that page.
Mr. Munkin, can you go back to the slide with the itemization? I think that's what he's speaking to.
No, it's in digitally,
Shall we-
it's page 187 in our packet. There's just a yellow, it says communication line, 3-foot buffer. So what, page 187 digitally in the packet? I didn't know if that was actually truly like fiber optics communication line buffers that are running underground, or if that's something for the public to be able to approach the sculpture. Does anyone have the packet in front of them?
Yeah, the pack, what page is it on, Councilmember?
187.
187? I'm having trouble hearing this, so it's making it even more difficult. So apologize.
187.
Okay, that's the map of the proposed location. And we're not talking about that tonight, so if you want to have some more concession on that, we can get some more detail and come back on the location. And Mick, or Mr. Munkin, you have anything else to add on that?
No, but we can respond to that, but it does show the intent that the placement of the art piece would be outside of that easement area.
So, Mr. Monken, what is a communication line 3-foot buffer?
That is for the utilities that go into the Boys and Girls Club. So basically, it's a protected utility.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I was trying to ascertain. So with that, once again, I agree with Mr. Wiesner as far as a couple of questions as far as accessibility, as far as the placement costs. We're going to have a couple $1,000s to put a crane out there and pour a concrete pad and all that stuff anyway, at least. So that wouldn't stop me from moving forward if this is at all time sensitive.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. We'll turn to Councilor Stuckey.
So as I understand, this is more approving the cost of the installation and the painting and the sandblasting as opposed to the location. If for some reason we approve this and a different location is chosen, will that dollar amount change?
It's
We
not
would come, go ahead, Mick.
sorry. It's anticipated that this cost is sufficient that it can be placed anywhere within the city.
So that's the pad, and so if we had a pad, we would build it the same any place in the city is.
That's correct.
Okay, back to Councilor Servadius.
Looking around to see if there's any other questions. If not, if you guys want to bring it up on the screen, or you probably can't hear me. There we go. I move that the mayor execute Resolution 21-28 and agreement for placement of artwork meditation, allocating $12,000 from the Creative Arts Fund to be used for the repair, painting, transportation, and installation of the Joseph Kinnebrew sculpture meditation.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended motion in the packet and on the screen. A motion made by Councilor Servadius, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor, signify by raising your hand. Looks like we've got.
Aye.
Looks like we've got a unanimous vote there. Thank you, Council. Okay, we'll move on then to item number 7B, which is Resolution 2130, Resolution City of Oak Harbor accepting the recommendations of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for funding the 2022 Lodging Tax Program for single-year grant awards. And this evening we have again, our Finance Director, Mr. Goldman, to present this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Jazz Webster to make the presentation on this item.
Thank you, Dave. Go ahead and get my screen here. All right, so that should be up on the screen for everyone. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. I am Chaz Webster, Finance and Performance Analyst with the Finance Department. Tonight, I'll be presenting the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendations for 2022 Lodging Tax Grant Awards. On October 5th, Council approved additional funding for the 2022 grant awards in the amount of $123,000. On October 29th, LTAC reviewed the applications, and tonight the recommendations for award are brought forth for council consideration and approval. LTAC received 12 applications, 9 of which were awarded the amounts as shown. By unanimous vote, the funding was recommended as follows. We have Greater Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce at $37,500, City of Oak Harbor Parks Department at $10,000, City of Oak Harbor Whidbey Island Marathon, $10,000, Craig McKenzie Team Foundation at $11,000, Island County Master Gardener Foundation at $4,000, Oak Harbor Main Street Association at $4,000, Oak Harbor Music Festival $41,000, Oak Harbor Youth Sailing $500, and Whidbey Health Foundation at $5,000 for the total of $123,000. The recommended motion is to adopt Resolution 2130, approving that Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for recommended awards for the 2% grant annual single year applications for grant year 2022, and authorize Blaine Osborne City Administrator to sign the professional service contracts. The motion displayed reads slightly different than what is in your packet due to further discussion with the procurement policy would not apply. Thank you, and we can take any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Chaz. Before we go to council, verify that we've not heard from our public regarding this.
That's correct,
correct?
Mayor. We
Okay.
received no comments.
No comment, none here either, so we will turn to the council for questions, input, or motion. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'm excited for awarding these grants, and it's exciting for our city, and it helps bring people in. I do have a question. Why, in this recommended action, are we approving that the city administrator, Blaine Osborne, sign the professional service contracts above $30,000 in accordance with procurement policy when I went back November 20th, 2018, it was to execute, be the finance director, and in 2019, it was also the finance director. What changed? Why are we changing who signs it?
So I,
So we had further discussion.
go ahead.
Can I come on and answer? We had further discussion after I had submitted that information on the agenda and agendas, so I do apologize, but this would be the recommended action, just slightly different from what was in the packet.
And Chaz, I believe we discussed, but I think last year the city administrator signed, I'm not sure what happened in 18 or 19, but you were using last year's as guidance for this year. And is that what you found in the agreements?
Yeah.
So we could not hear Chaz. We could not understand her. Could you repeat that, what she said, Mr. Goldman, or help us understand?
Oh, okay. Yes. She said that, I hear echoes. She said that we had discussion after the item was submitted in Agenda E's, and it turned out that the procurement policy didn't apply. So based on that discussion, we put up on the screen the recommended motion to pass. Now, as far as signing the agreements by the city administrator, when we were doing this, we looked at what happened last year, and we found that it was for the city administrator to sign last year. I'm not sure what it was in 18 or 19, but that's what it showed last year. Of course, we don't have a dog in this fight. Like, we don't whatever the council or the city attorney decides is the most appropriate person to sign the contracts. That's the direction we will follow.
Yeah, and Mayor, I think traditionally it's been the city administrator in the time I've been here, but certainly if you want to follow the tradition of most other contracts and have you sign it, certainly you can go. I think it's because of accessibility. Probably it's been recommended by the city administrator, but certainly if you want to amend that and add the mayor instead. And I don't know if our attorney wants to pipe in here too on this issue, but certainly I don't have any dog in the fight. I think the main issue is getting these things signed and getting them out to the people who benefit from them.
And I'll just note that the city council could designate anyone to sign it. It doesn't matter. It's your authority to designate, so.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. First and foremost, as the chair of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, I just want to thank all of the volunteers, the 3 collectors and the 3 recipients or individuals that can represent a possible recipient that volunteer their time for that committee. So thank you to all of you and to staff that help put that together every year. Mr. Goldman, you referenced a motion that sounds like it's different than what's in our packet that we should be seeing on the screen. Can we pull that up?
Yeah, Chaz will pull it up.
So traditionally, it has always been the finance director. I see no reason to change that. You're very involved in the process. Last year was an anomaly, obviously, with COVID and carrying over contracts. So depending on what comes up on the screen here, if we have any further questions, I'll yield to my peers. Otherwise, I'm happy to make a motion. I will abstain, Mayor. I'm still on the board of the chamber till the end of the year, so I'll be abstaining. So that looks about like what we have here. Right, I was just curious, so once again, the discussion we had was it's traditionally been, as Ms. Munns, I think, referenced, you read, I don't know if you read them, but 2018, 2019, every year I remember doing it, we just have the finance director sign these contracts, so I'll yield to my peers for a moment.
Anybody? I guess they're yielding back to you.
I would just stick with tradition then and have I need to look at this, I would have the finance director. So I move to adopt Resolution 21-30, approving the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommended awards for the 2% grant annual single-year applications for grant year 2022 and authorize our finance director to sign the professional services contracts.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second that reads recommended motion to adopt Resolution 2130, and it reads pretty much through until it says authorize our finance director to sign the professional services contract. And that motion was made by Councilor Servadius, and the second is Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Yes, Councilor Eisen?
Just quickly before we vote, I wanted to extend a huge thank you to Councilmember Servadius for his years as chair of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. That's a big thing to take on, and you've done it beautifully. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Okay. All in favor signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we've got a couple of abstentions, possibly? Yes, Councilor Wiesner and Councilor Servadius have abstained, right? Okay, they were involved in the process. And I too thank you, Mr. Servadius, for a lot of hours and hard work. Thank you very much. We will move then to our item number 7C, Resolution 2132, a resolution authorizing the sale of an abandoned vessel. So I think we have our Harbor Master, Chris Sublett, to tell us about that. Mr. Sublett?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Chris Sublett, Harbor Master. I have a presentation to share with you. So I'm here tonight seeking authorization to auction off an abandoned vessel that was left by one of our former tenants.
On October 13th, 2021, we issued a termination of lease mortgage agreements and agreement for storage shed rental letter to this tenant. It should be noted he had 2 vessels in the marina, not just one. And the reason we issued this letter to this tenant was he was dumping debris into the water. He had unauthorized living aboard going on, and he was also sleeping in his storage shed. And this did apply to his storage shed and both of his mortgage agreements as well. The letter. Mr. Sublette?
Yes.
Are you trying to, I don't believe your item is coming up. Are you trying to bring a presentation up? For some reason it's running slow.
We can see it.
Let me try and share it one more time then. Okay.
Chris?
All right, we see it now.
Okay.
Oh, you see it now? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I am having a hard time seeing it, but that's okay. Let me see if I can. Would it be possible for Tim to bring this up? It seems like I'm having a hard time here for some reason.
Chris? Tim has the presentation
It's in the folder?
up on the screen.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Here we go. Can you see it now? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. On October 13th, as I stated, we did issue this termination and it applied to both his rental agreement and his mortgage agreements. And I am not able to advance the slides. There we go. The letter directed him to remove both of his vessels by 8 a.m. on October 28th. And the letter also stated that failure to do so would result in the vessels being considered abandoned. He only removed one of the vessels. So as per the letter, the second vessel is now considered abandoned. And it should be also noted that he has not made any effort to remove the vessel or contact the marine. So moving forward with City Council authorization, the vessel will be sold at public auction. And the legal authority to do this is your RCW's and Ohio Municipal Code Section 6.36, specifically 0.5, and that's going to give us the authorization for a public sale of the abandoned vessel by authorized personnel to the highest bidder. So the motion that I'm hoping to hear tonight is just to approve Resolution 2132, authorizing public sale of the abandoned vessel by authorized personnel to the highest bidder. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And Mr. Sublette, can I add a little bit to this?
Sure.
To what your comments, you did confer with legal counsel, with Hillary, our Evan's colleague on this and working through this. And this is a little slightly different than your normal one, but you did work through legal counsel in addressing it in this manner.
That is correct. We did work with legal counsel on this very extensively, and it is somewhat different process than the normal boat auction that we would go through for failure to pay mortgage. So yeah, it's a little bit different.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sublette, and I'll verify with our clerk that we've gotten no input from our public.
That's correct, Mayor. No
okay?
input.
Okay, then we'll turn to council. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think there's really much discussion. It's been handled legally. I will make the motion. I move to approve Resolution 2132, authorizing the public sale of the abandoned vessel by authorized personnel to the highest bidder.
Got a motion and a second, and it reads exactly like the recommended motion on your screen there. The motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Munns, second by Councilor Stuckey. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, we got...
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And I believe our final item this evening is the proposed 2022 City Council meeting schedule that is provided for review and comment prior to formal adoption at the December 14th meeting. So we're asking that council to have a look at that and let us know if there's any changes that you see that might need to be made. And we'll, otherwise we'll move forward to adopt that at our December 14th meeting. Is that correct? Okay, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a typo for National Night Out. On the note section, it says 6/2 when it's August 2, but it's in the notes next to August. So, I mean, obviously it's on the right month, just a typo. And I'm wondering if there are any ideas about when we might have our 2022 council retreat.
We've certainly been talking about it, but we don't have, we'd prefer to have one sooner rather than later. And that's what we're working on. I do not have any weeks to even give you at this point, but I will make my best effort to try to set that and do that soon. Mr. Osborne?
Yeah, normally we don't put the retreat schedule into the annual council, but that is a good question. And I think, like the mayor said, we're shooting for it in early 2022 was the goal. And so we have to look at logistics and that. So we'll probably be coming back at some time when we have the new council setting and making sure that we have a date everybody can attend.
So any other business, any other input for this meeting? Questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Got a motion second to adjourn. All in favor? Signify by raising your hand. Then we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you to the public.